After Twilight Princess was released, Nintendo stated the Zelda timeline had two branches. One for the future where Ganon was defeated in a player-controlled manner, and another in this new past where said villain got arrested and faced this somewhat atypically messy execution after Link explained to a certain psychic princess what crimes he was about to commit. Lots of people were okay with this because it was based on events directly shown in Ocarina of Time. Later, in a guidebook, another historical branch was added with a link to the past and some other games on it, in which things are different because fighting against Evil's King resulted in pointy-eared hero death. Some people were less than okay with this because such events were never shown, and it made them feel like this was just pulled out of thin air to section off games that were made before the series seemed like it was definitely going to last longer than 3 entries. Regardless of how planned it was at any point, there's plenty of stuff present in OOT which can be interpreted in ways that make it work pretty well. Here's all that then. To start, when Zelda sends the visually seen hero of time to a new reality with Ocarina music, she seems to know it will work by creating some sort of fresh dimension for him, rather than replacing their current one with an absolutely hunky-dory substitute. Well, her tone suggests this anyway, as it seems to scream, I have to clean up this mess of a kingdom, not this poor kid. It's most likely she knows this because somebody else, probably another version of her, already sent an individual here to prevent an even worse history from coming to pass. This person most likely tried altering things and then figured out his own world wouldn't change after him and the princess did some magical experimentation crap that involved using crystal balls or whatever to glimpse current futures. Lots of such sorcery shows up in this series quite often after all. Perhaps the presence of folks from 2 different universes caused a pair of visions to be shown, and that's how everybody figured out time was fractured when altered with this magic. This person still wouldn't want to let another world fall though, because why would he? Anyway, this guy was almost definitely Rauru, the Sage of Light. He, of all the wise people, would have been sent, because not only has his potential replacement already been born, given his greater age, those other medallion holders were all warrior capable and thus could fight for Hyrule together against a Triforce-wielding Ganon. The Gerudo and Zoras had plenty of guards around. Impa comes from a ninja clan. Gorons are naturally nigh indestructible, at least when fiery dragons aren't munching on them. And while Kokiri weren't shown to be particularly well armed or anything, their home does have a training ground, and everybody's just fine when it's taken over by overly aggressive monsters. Another reason to pick him could be that his Dark World form, which is said to be based on one's inner self, was rather easy flea capable, like a nocturnal bird of prey for example. He might have learned how to manifest his owl form in light places so travel could become easier. Maybe accepting both bodies as his true self, coupled with possessing great innate magical power to begin with, allowed him to do this. On a related note, perhaps the reason both Human Robe Guy and Insomniac Featherbrains ask about repeating info oh so often is because they don't want to witness another child dying. Speaking of which, it's most likely this Link got frozen upon grabbing the Master Sword, because old Universe him got slain as a youngin' after facing down Ganon, following his temple-conquering Sage Awakening quest portion. Of all the particularly well-honed mind folks, Rauru is the only one who comments on how well Time's hero would have performed as a child. Everybody else only mentioned personal feeling-related stuff. Also, there'd be no reason for folks in this series to think kids in general couldn't save the world simply because of not being developed physically/mentally/emotionally enough, as legends of 3 child heroes are brought up and or shown in-game during Midgecap and 4 Swords, which take place before all this. It's as if the Light Sage knows firsthand how things will go with this particular champion, because he already witnessed everything go down badly. Interestingly enough, the only reason Child Link can't go into most temples is because their general public access granting entrances were sabotaged. It just so happens that every dangerous sacred place is somewhere an owl could easily reach and also possesses architecture a resourceful human could sabotage no problem. There seem to have been very kid-friendly stairs leading to the Forest Temple relatively recently in history, something which could have easily been destroyed by bombs obtained at Goron City. On that note, all that's required for barring fire and water Holy House access is destroying 2 civilizations' small magic tunic inventory, something Talons could do really effectively. Chances are shadowy hallowed grounds once had the same kind of entrance as their greener counterpart, but things were cleaned up quite quickly afterwards because neighboring Kakariko is full of carpenters, and leaving a graveyard so messy is horribly disrespectful. The only place which isn't totally child-proofed is the Spirit Temple, and its partial exclusion can be neatly explained away as messing with Ganon's home turf being much trickier than everywhere else. There's also probably something along the lines of wanting to make sure Link got this place's treasures instead of that other guy going on here. So some sneaky modifications might have been made after Rauru informed Naboru of what's going on, so things are set up in ways which only grant time travelers goodies. Since temporal tampering's been brought up again, it seems appropriate to mention plenty of that good old-fashioned only change what's absolutely necessary junk present in most history reworking tales is going on here too. As demonstrated by the fact the future King of Evil wasn't assassinated in his diapers or whatever. This very well could have been accomplished by informing the most wise being available in this world of what needed to be done and letting him conjure up a plan that helped ensure space-time didn't collapse too much. Also, it would really help if said entity was capable of easily checking up on the main hero candidate throughout his entire life. A certain great Deku Tree fits the bill quite nicely. He may have achieved this by creating new life forms that all had guardian fairies alongside them throughout their entire existence, whose sole purpose was to provide guidance. Such creatures talking non-stop in an overly concerned way wouldn't be suspicious at all under any circumstances. Perfect for stealthily keeping the space-time continuum from getting completely obliterated by butterfly effect related what have you. None of the other forms his magically created subject children take throughout these games, such as those precocious Koroks, and presumably a Link to the Past Lost Woods inhabiting tunic donners, come with constantly present helpers after all. It's also interesting that the idea of omnipresent Force Folk assistance is seemingly abandoned right after the Hero of Time's work gets done in Adult Realm, and young Link's timeline apparently never involved getting sent a fairy at all. On that note, the only other instance not great talking sprites are seen after OOT is during Majora's Mask, which takes place in a more traditional alternate universe, specifically one where everything's kinda opposite sometimes. So chances are that chatty light balls being a natural and freely roaming species in Termino's world means they could very easily be totally artificial in Hyrule's. Okay, Phantom Hourglass says something, but those are said to be spirits, not fairies. One last thing about all this that's sorta unrelated. The fact that human wooded area folk aren't seen in most timelines after these events is because Kokiri Forest's first people were only created to hide a Hylian's presence. There's nothing suggesting they had a particularly long history in their home after all, like a textbook for example, and if a magical talking tree says it's been hiding some kids forever, people are gonna believe everything when their beloved royal family says to. Everyone in Lost Woods adjacent places could have very well been decommissioned and or Korok-ized once the great Deku Tree realized Link was never gonna return. Or maybe it simply happened once he passed away from old age. The Fallen Hero timeline mentioned in this video is an exception filled with human tree huggers, because it's said Leafy Guardian's way of paying respect to that poor young man who perished trying to save absolutely all life. Anyway, that was nice to get out of the brain. Enjoy yourselves, everybody.